we know as spiritual women that there's more beyond a meat body pushing out a baby so that we can just hug it and take pictures with it and look cute, right? Like there's something much more connected to something bigger that we don't understand completely, that we don't necessarily have control of this world completely, although this OB model pretends that we can.
Welcome back to the podcast, ladies. Today, I am so excited to be interviewing Dr. Victoria Flores. She is a home-based obstetrician who specializes in home birth, and she is a trailblazer in this field of holistic obstetrics. She brings a rare and deeply rooted expertise in the vaginal birth of twins and breech babies in home birth settings. With years of hands-on experience and a profound respect for the body's wisdom, Dr. Flores has safely supported many families through births that are often deemed too risky or unmanageable outside of the hospital. Dr. Victoria, thank you for coming on the show today. I'm so excited to be talking with you.
Wonderful to be here with you, Karen.
Can you tell us, how did you get into this field? This is such a rare thing for an obstetrician to be delivering babies at home. I'm assuming you probably get a lot of side eyes and judgment from peers in your field. I'm always curious, how did you end up in this field?
It's so funny. And people have heard me on other podcasts and be like, oh, she's, saying the same thing. So pardon that. But I really did know I wanted to help moms deliver babies in the home birth environment, probably since I was 18, 19. Even in my middle school days, I had a fascination with female physiology because it was like one of those taboo subjects back in the 90s that people just didn't really want to say too much about. But I was just naturally inclined to be the one girl that knew way too much about girl stuff and girl parts and girl hormones. And I was just really curious. And I think that the taboo around learning about puberty, sex, birth just really made me curious. And I mean, that was one of my curiosities of many. I'll say that I've had passions in many different places, but that was one of my science-oriented pathways that I was inclined towards. And I actually wanted to be a ballerina for my young adult years. Oh. And I was classically trained at Anaheim Ballet, and I got an injury. I on the ice and I hurt my knee, and I just really never could go down on that knee for a while, which is, if you're in a ballet, you have to do a lot of up and down onto a knee, off of a knee. So I had to kind of realize, you know what? They told me that careers for ballerinas were short. Mine's really short. So I wanted to shift and pivot pretty quickly. I was very blessed to have science and health and holistics around me growing up. My mom's an OT. She also has a master's in education. And my father, he did biochemistry at Riverside, UC Riverside. And then he worked in bio lab and water sanitation for the LA Sanitation Water District. So I was used to a very scientifically oriented, health-oriented family, as well as taboo and interesting subjects that most general people were kind of like weirded out by, like just things that they weren't really comfortable talking about: blood, guts, cloning, weird topics that were very interesting for my family. And I remember people coming over and just kind of mentioning, oh, we're really unique. In that household, we read a lot. My parents just made sure that we were well-rounded in so many things.
That's amazing. So such a geek, nerdy, scientific background, and also this awe for women's bodies. That's a great combination.
And so then when I decided to go into healthcare, I was still an undergrad. And one of the ways to do that was to be a top student, right? So, and I really liked the mind and how people behaved and why they behaved that way. I've always been spiritually curious as well. Did a lot of spiritual development early in my life. And I would say it was earlier than most people. And so I connected to our source and our God much sooner than a lot of people my age. I was kind of the weird one in that regard as well. But my sensitivities to spiritual bodies amongst us was, fostered early. I was sensitive to it early. I went to school, became a neuroscience major at UC Irvine. And then I went to USC for medical school. And then after that, I went to residency at Kern. I definitely didn't jive with the people that were in the program with me, unfortunately. And I think it was from day one, I was asking about breech, honestly. I remember being like, oh, do you guys do breech deliveries here? And they were like, no, because it's not evidence-based and supported. And of course, as a kid, I was like, whatever. So I'm just going to learn it on my own. And I did. I can look back at the screenshots I took from those early days in 2016 when I started residency after medical school. And I can see that I had a lot of breech shots in there, honestly. And I always was kind of like, challenges have not hadn't been intimidating to me at that point in my life, because I think dance really taught me that things are hard and you just have to practice to get through them, and you will get to that point if you give it enough. So I came at breech and I came at twin birth with that confidence that like, I'm going to get this. I know it. And I did. And I really did. But it was definitely a taboo subject, and nobody else felt that impassioned to do that. And it was a natural inclination for me. Anyway, so then I went to Kern. After that, in my fourth year, I transferred over to a different university for the fourth year of my residency. But about 4 months to the end of it, it was at Tufts in Boston, actually. It was wonderful. Everything jived. It was really sweet. It just wasn't clicking the workload of it. And I just knew that that wasn't really what I wanted to do forever. The style of a physician's life and me being very spiritual, I wanted to live. And I think that a lot of people don't have, they were going to go into it for the work of it. I really wanted to go into it for the passion of it. And I was losing the passion for it, honestly. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself that I wanted to do it that way, I couldn't. Like, I got sicker. My body was sicker. I could just tell. And so around February of 2020, it was right before COVID, like literally right before COVID, like early March, maybe. I called Stu Fishbein, who I just randomly looked, home birth obstetrician, like, yeah, that's a thing, right? And then he was the only name that popped up, and I reached out to him, and he was like, oh, I'm retiring this year. You should come and talk to me now, because it would be great to have somebody transition to. And I was like, what? This is just
Wow.
angelically led. It was so beautiful. And so then he invited me into his clinic. I got to shadow him initially. And then he began to have me shadow him at births. And then he would ask moms if I could catch. And along the entire time, I got to ask my questions that would make me more confident in doing it myself. And eventually, people started reaching out to me because, as the new girl, I didn't have the same price capacity that he had. So I could do it a little bit more discounted, because I was just like, I just need my numbers. So then I did my numbers. I got my numbers. I saw how confident the midwives in the community were, because I always bring a midwife with me, and midwives like to be a part of that. And I just became fully convinced that it's totally possible, as long as you select the right patients or clients, or still sorry. But as long as you have the right people involved, it does work. It does work. It's just, you got to have a confident team and a confident client as well.
Yeah. And now that must have been quite a transition for you to go from, I'm assuming you were operating in a hospital setting, educational setting before that, and then going all the way full on home birth with twins and breech. What were some of the learning curves that you had to like adjust to, like, we do things a little differently in this setting?
Yeah, but it actually was so much more natural to me. It's so interesting. Like I was kind of like that in the hospital, and I think that stood out as someone who was a little strange in the hospital environment. But I always wanted to utilize what was available creatively in my space to get things accomplished, because the goal was what I wanted. I wanted to reach that outcome, and I didn't care how we had to get there. So sometimes I would do things that were not typical. So for example, I operated a ton in residency, and I did tons of deliveries, more than most. I did almost 800 deliveries. Like that's C-sections plus vaginal, because you have to add them all up and stuff. And that's really, really, really high, because I think you only need 200 to graduate, like in vaginals, and maybe 150 of C-sections to graduate. And so I did plenty. It wasn't like not completing that little bit of training had anything to do with my exposure. I had more experience, and I do think you learn more from experience than just a book and stuff. What they really do want to train you to do is admin, honestly. It's more because you don't need that many to know how to deliver a baby, right? Like they really do deliver themselves mostly. So yeah, I mean, I learned that I was creative and in a different way than other people. I don't play an instrument. Yes, I dance. I have rhythm. I'm a thinker. I'm not, I don't sing. I mean, my husband says I sing beautifully, but that's whatever a husband would say. But I definitely have an art or God-given talent for understanding movement in space. And having been raised by a mother in OT who actually worked with NICU babies, preemies, and special needs children, how children moved. And I knew how fetuses could move potentially through the pelvis. And I think that having that intuition about movement makes it really clear to me how babies come through the pelvis. And for some people, I think it's very difficult to see those things if it's not blatant in front of their eyes, because a lot of this delivery thing is like in your head because it's behind the meat and the skin of the cranium, right? So things are happening inside of a woman. But for me, it's really, I see it almost like it's outside and clear to me. And I've realized over time that that's why I'm so confident, is that I have that unique ability to have 3D space shifts in my head. And because people are always like, how come you're so confident and nobody else is? But I just have a special talent for that type of thinking. I'm not saying I'm perfect at everything, but for that particular thing, it is it's like a trapeze artist. Like, that's their talent. This is my talent. It just is.
It's like supernatural X-ray vision, it sounds like in your mind. That's really cool.
Audience, I'll say, I really do believe that God had to shut one door for me by making it difficult for me in one environment for me to see where I was going to flourish and to find an environment that was more in tune with my nature. And I found it.
So do you really believe like that God called you to this work?
I mean, it's the only thing that really preoccupies my mind. So I feel like it has to be, until that goes away and something else begins to preoccupy my mind, then I'll shift away from it. I think that's also another thing, is I'm open to wherever I need to go, wherever the need is for me, versus just like locking into one career and forcing myself to do it forever. Like I try to do that, and I was getting sicker. I'm a smaller girl, so it's easier for me to be run on adrenaline. And when you're constantly being run on adrenaline, it does make you sick. You get issues, right? So I was feeling those. Some people call it, adrenal crises. They talk about, they just talk about burnout. And I feel like I was getting that sense. Yeah. And a lot of physicians do feel that, honestly. But as a smaller person who doesn't really eat as much as I should, honestly, I feel like I should eat more. I just don't get that hunger sensation like some people. I was weakening my body, and I could tell I needed a shift of slowing myself down. And I did. I found something.
That's amazing. And what a gift you are. She practiced in Southern California, and Dr. Stu used to practice there, which is, I mean, we love Dr. Stu on this show. I've interviewed him, and I always recommend clients to him or for consults, and you as well. And so it's just an honor to have you. And I love that you're sort of carrying on that legacy in a sense of providing these services, which are not typically available to many women in the U.S. just due to state laws. What is something that you wish more OBs and midwives understood about breech and twin birth?
That the mother's desire for ritual and mystery matters. That the newborn has a vessel for an actual soul connection to this earth and to their mother, maybe in an intangible way that can't be measured with the material world. But there's something so important to the birthing process for us as moms becoming mothers. And I think that when I speak with physicians that have heard of any bad thing, there's kind of a sentiment of, oh my goodness, birth is so dangerous, and this huge fear around it. It's so scary that they'd rather have everybody under a controlled situation of sedation, cesarean, and here's a baby. Now go bond to it and have a great life, right? It's almost like buying something at the store. They don't want the emotion about it. The emotions are scary. And birth it's emotional. And that's one thing that I think is nice for doing it in a home birth setting for me, is that I get those heavy emotions at smaller points or for shorter times in my overall life versus every single moment when you're delivering 10 babies a day, right? In the ward. It's a way more to cope with in such an environment, especially with so many people talking at you and so many nurses and calls and consults. I mean, all of that stuff is so involving that there's like nothing left of you to give to the 10 patients that actually came there to see you because of the systematic parts of healthcare delivery. But so I've learned that keeping it simple, even though the system doesn't like it, because there are a lot of jobs dependent on that system, it makes it really nice for me to continue because I can bring my nervous system back down to zero, however long I need it to, and then say, okay, I'm ready to do it again. And I feel healthier and I have more longevity in that. And I think Stu also knew that too, which is one reason why, over 11, 13 years, I think there was only about 100 twin births and maybe another 150 breech births on top of that. But it's not like we're doing thousands of these. Like they just don't exist for home birth in that quantity. Right. So not that it can't be done, but it's like once you know to trust it, like I can do it forever. I believe. And if I'm shown otherwise, then I would stop. I'm open to that as well. So that's another thing is I don't stop thinking, where I do believe that need to continue thinking is really involved for the obstetrician in the hospital format because they have to remember the surgeries. They have to remember basic medicine. There's so many more things taking their attention, but birth is so like my expertise that it's something I can handle.
Yeah. Tell us more about the ritual and the spiritual side of birth, because that's a topic we often discuss here. And I'm just so intrigued by your perspective on this as a home birth obstetrician and how you see this play out in the births you attend, or maybe even you have some particular clients that you remember that really came into play. I would just love to hear more about what that means to you.
We know as spiritual women that there's more beyond a meat body pushing out a baby so that we can just hug it and take pictures with it and look cute, right? Like there's something much more connected to something bigger that we don't understand completely, that we don't necessarily have control of this world completely, although this OB model pretends that we can statistically analyze it enough that we can completely control it. It's just not going to be possible because there's something beyond. There's luck involved. There's God's intention involved. There's a bigger story that's being involved. There's cosmic magnetic shifts being involved. There's so many things. There's attitude for the day. There's confidence of the woman, confidence of the team that does show up, that doesn't show up, that whole thing, family around them, so many things. So I feel like birth is so energetic and spiritual. And when I'm monitoring babies and I'm monitoring mommies at home, I try to use my sixth sense, my intuition about how they're both doing, which is something you can't really teach or guarantee that someone's actually feeling. People just have to like know if they have it or they don't, like, because it takes work on your own, right, to like prove it to yourself and have confidence in that. So for me, I can tell when a mommy is dropping into it and trusting it. There's one mom in particular that I remember her breech birth. She was a first-time mom having a breech birth, and that could be scary for most women because they're like, oh my goodness, I know that the breech birth is so special and perhaps some people call dangerous. And then the head entrapment is always what they're talking about, right? The head entrapment. And then they're talking about how, even a first-time mom at home, it's going to be so much more labor. And yes, there is labor. And yes, I would say breech birth has its particularities that make it a little bit more difficult sometimes, not all the time, sometimes. But I just know that it would work when certain things are happening that I see at the perineum during the delivery that make me have confidence in its success or not. Anyway, so during this one mother's delivery, we were getting really close to pushing. She got to complete and started pushing. And she's pushing and pushing for about an hour, doing really well. And then we see the butt. If you were to open the introitus, we see the butt. So I know that she's completely dilated without doing an exam. I know that those hips can fit through because I can see the butt down below by trochanteric diameters. And I know if that happens, then the head's going to fit through as well, because the legs are going to come next, and it's going to dilate the space, the muscle, the levator ani, the muscular body of the pelvis is going to open broader. And when that happens, the head is actually smaller than that overall diameter down below, which is something that is not taught.
Yeah.
It's really unique. So when I saw that happening, I had confidence this can happen for this mom. However, started to be some decelerations, which everyone thinks, oh, decels are all bad. They're not all bad. Okay. There's different types of variable or decelerations. There's variable decelerations, early decelerations, there's late decelerations. There's even some like just funky changes in baseline, right? That are not necessarily decelerations. Anyway, so she was having variable decelerations. And usually when the baby gets that low to the perineum, you can imagine that their belly button, which is where their umbilical cord comes out, is being squished as they're trying to get through the perineum. And that squishing of the umbilical cord causes variable decels. But for me, I'm thinking that's good because we're getting close to the end. And so some people would say you'd have to push the baby up to prevent those variables and then centering for a C-section. But I knew that this was going to fit because I saw that bitrochanteric diameter. And me and the midwives told that mother, while that baby is in that squished position and between contractions, we want you to hum and sing to your baby. And the most cool thing happened. Every time that contraction finished, she started singing whatever she wanted to do. And she absolutely connected with her baby. And we saw that baseline because we have a monitor on the baby's heart, right? So it's not like we're doing this blindly. The baby's heart rate would come up to its baseline and start dancing around in this beautiful fluctuation. And we know that if a baby has good variability and there's a specific pattern that consists of variability versus something like sinusoidal pattern, I want to be clear because somebody's going to try and say, oh, well, maybe that was what you're hearing. That told us that this baby was so happy in there. And when a baby hears its mom's voice, it can choose to wake up from its unconscious sleep. Or perhaps it's asleep and its consciousness is outside of its body in the delta form, right? We don't know exactly what's going on, but there's some people that are, I'm going to sound nuts, but there's telepathic children that have said that during delta, your spirit or your consciousness can actually detach from your physical body. But when the mom hums, it brings baby back into the body, wakes the baby up just enough that it can experience love because it has its incarnate form. And so in this love, you can just see babies coming to life inside their mother. And you can see them go back to sleep again too. Like if the mom does stop humming or something, you can see them just not really react to things. And you're like, oh, baby's probably just not conscious of what's going on right now. But if you want it to be, you can have mom connect with that baby and you'll see a difference in their heart rate. And I think that is so beautiful. And to me, that's so spiritual because that's something that no one's going to teach you to do, is to ask mom to connect with her baby and bring them to the present moment to experience something with them as needed for medicine, to keep them well during labor, right? I mean, this is to fight the difficulties of labor, bring them here, make them happy, and they will be more resilient in labor. Like that's definitely spiritual. They don't teach that.
No, they definitely don't teach that in medical school or hospitals. And I love that so much. We talk about those altered states of consciousness and how labor happens in an altered state. It happens in alpha and beta and delta, and the babies live there. And that's where we connect to babies. And I just absolutely love the way you're approaching birth, which is really, from my understanding, from a connection point of view, like we're connecting mom and baby. We're intentionally connecting mom and baby to their each other and the birth process so that they're both online, they're both happy, they're both well. And that's such a beautiful thing. It gives you more tools than just, oh, I can hear the heart tones or I can hear the breathing.
Exactly. 100%. I have more tools, which makes it easier for me to trust birth at home more than the typical MD because it's not something that they're told to trust. But I've proven it to myself over my life experience. And that confidence is really, that's why you do it.
It's amazing. And fear so often drives a lot of decision-making in birth. How do you help women and care providers shift out of fear and into the trust that you carry?
It's so hard. It really is, because that is more than something I can say or something that I could just tell them to do. because fears are often beliefs that have been implanted very, very early from exposures to a lot, right? Things that we don't even consciously know we're exposed to, just passing by our eyes as children that program us. But yeah, so I would say that if someone were to go down a inquiry with themselves or with a therapist or with someone who knows them well and tells them just to lead them, to ask them, what could you fear in birth? What could you think could happen to you? Why do you fear that? Is it because you fear death? Why do you fear death? Why do you fear being disconnected from this world? Why do you fear? And just continuing to break down any fears until you get to a place of complete acceptance that you can't control it all, but you're here and you're gonna live this life, especially if you chose to accept a pregnancy at a subconscious level. Your body's like, I'm going to do this. Then you just got to take the lessons of it and trust in it. You're going to do it as safely as you can with your conscious decision-making skills. But then also at your spiritual level, there's got to be kind of a surrender to, you can't control every single thing, unfortunately. I mean, some people done for some people, it's just soul growth.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Absolutely. As you're supporting like vaginal and twin births at home, which is very unconventional, even in California, where there's lots of people who want natural birth, how do you determine who's a good candidate for a breech or twin birth?
Great. So there's a kind of standard criteria, like you want the baby to not be too young, not too small, not too big. So we say, I like the number 35 weeks, 36 weeks, but honestly, it could probably be 33, 34 weeks, because that's about the time that the head of the baby becomes almost equal to the butt and the legs wrapped around it, so that there's an equal distance in the diameters when they come out. So it's coming out like a bean instead of like an upside down cone with a big head, you know?
Which is, I love that explanation. I learned that from Dr. Stu originally, was like when they talk about head entrapment, which is kind of what you're referring to, where you have a bigger head and a smaller torso or butt, and doctors get so scared. They scare women into this, lots of fear mongering about how they'll have head entrapment if they try to deliver a breech baby. But they don't tell you is that the butt doesn't come out without the legs. And so it comes out with the legs. So that expands even more. And you pointed that out earlier. I wanted to kind of translate that a little bit for some that might not have caught what you were saying, because I feel like that's such an important piece of birth, of breech birth.
And there's going to be someone right now listening that says, well, what if they're footling? And they're thinking, what if this baby is footling? And they're thinking, oh, do the feet presenting make it a footling? And what we as breech birth providers are saying is, if you have a baby that's term and what we consider 5 pounds or above and equal growth between head and rump, then there shouldn't be the ability or the space in your uterus to stand up, so that there would be a smaller diameter of the feet dilating the cervix so that the baby would fall through and then have its head caught. That happens with preemies. That could happen with really preemie twins, perhaps, because then there's like more growth of the uterus. But those cases are not the cases we're taking on. Like if someone is preemie, they're going to be in a hospital. And a lot of the fetal death statistics are because of prematurity. So you could take those numbers out completely from the numbers we should be working with. We're only talking about term fetal issues. And there's not going to be a footling. There's just not. I've seen babies more oblique in the uterus and then the feet come out, but usually the feet don't come out and the butt stays in. I mean, if you have feet out and the butt in, then that's probably not going to continue working. And I've transferred women in with 1 foot out and like 1 foot still tucked up inside. And it was not an emergency because the cord is still up inside the uterus. So it's got the fluff and space of the uterus. It just has space there. Y'all have to just trust that it does. It's not being squeezed through the tiniest portion of the birth canal. And it's being protected by folds and bends of the body. And it usually just tends to lay itself in those spots. And it's got Wharton's jelly protecting the vessel. So it keeps this tumescence of stretching open the vessels within it and preventing collapse from pressures around it, the cord. So those babies that get transferred in with something funky like that, they still do great. They get a C-section. Maybe the hospital's a little dramatic about it, but eventually people it's not that big a deal. But if that's happened once, that's why I'm saying that. But that still wasn't, we didn't call that a footling. That would have been an oblique lie that the baby fell into at some point during labor, but didn't start labor in that. Yeah.
So like a true definition of footling would be like they're standing up and their legs are only legs are coming out first.
That's the thing, dilating the cervix. So it's like, well, what is presenting above the cervix that will dilate it? And that's what you got to think. It's like, okay, if the feet are dilating it only, then that's going to be dangerous. But if there's the bum and the feet together coming at it like a wedge, then it's going to dilate larger. And as long as they get to complete and those hip bones with those feet come through, that's really safe. That's really
You're golden. Yeah.
Yeah, really safe. And then the other thing is some people talk about, head entrapment of the term baby. If the hips and the feet come out, and I'm sure Stu said this too, the head is going to come out. Occasionally, it needs to just be adjusted into position. But that's because if you put a t-shirt on, a really tight t-shirt and you're trying to put it over your nose and it's getting stuck, you just have to tilt your head forward and then do it over the vertex of your head. And then it slips over just fine. So occasionally we have to adjust a baby's head manually. That's considered an intervention. But if you know the intervention, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And that's what I tell women is like if you breech in the hands of a skilled provider is not dangerous. But if your provider doesn't know these techniques and maneuvers and what normal looks like, then they could overreact or you could have more complications. And tell us, how would you determine these? You obviously can't predict what might happen in labor, but you obviously must have a criteria you work with for kind of selecting what would be a good candidate.
Yeah, I'll write it out and say it to you. Okay, so we want a longitudinal lie. We want the baby to be either in a complete or frank presentation. That's beneficial. Occasionally, we do get an incomplete. We will just say there's an increased risk of cord prolapse in that case. But with cord prolapse, that's not that big of a deal in a breech birth because it doesn't have the same risks of being squished. The cord doesn't have the same risks of being squished as if the baby was a head down baby. When a baby's a head down baby, it's putting a hard bony head against a hard bony pelvis. Whereas in that breech, there's like the folds of the crisscross legs. And in case there's a cord prolapse, it still has a lot of room to breathe and move between those crevices. The size that I was telling you about, don't want the baby to be too big, too small. First of all, a too small baby, everyone wonders what's so bad about having a too small baby. Well, the baby won't tolerate labor very well because the contractions build a lot of power and can squish down the baby too hard or squish the cord down too hard. And you'll see variables in the deceleration pattern, which is not terrible either, unless they are progressive and worsening, because you just imagine it like doing dives. Like, how often can you hold your breath repeatedly, right? I mean, you can do it for a period of time, hold your breath and then breathe. But if someone's making you do that for hours at a time, eventually you will tire out. And with a little tiny baby's body, it's not going to have the actual amount of energy in its tiny muscles to continue doing that as long as an adult could, right? So you don't want a baby that's too small. We let moms with big babies at home try if they want to, because yes, big babies can be born. We get 9-pounder babies, vaginal breech, 9.5 pounders. I haven't had a 10-pounder breech yet. Maybe I have actually, I can't remember. But it depends on the mother. If the mom looks like she's tall, like she's got a little bit more girth in her hips, she's a flexible young female, then she's probably going to just open up just fine, especially if she's a multiple and has had another large baby before, then absolutely we're going to be fine. So, I mean, the larger baby criteria is really dependent on the details of the patient's history, right? So that's another thing. I can't say it's yes for everybody. That's
right.
The other thing is there's no anomalies. We don't want there to be a thyroid mass that's preventing the head from flexing, right? So you have to be able to flex that fetal head if you need to get it out. One of the criteria term as well, but we have a loose definition of term for home birth just because there are so many women that can have 6-7 pounders at 35 or 36 weeks. And if they have a lifestyle that matures that baby because of lifestyle factors, then sometimes the babies, they just know when they're ready to come out, and it's a little early. I've gone up to 43 and 3 days.
Wow.
For a breech. And I am not saying no to VBACs in my practice for breech.
That's awesome. Yeah.
VBACs and anomalies, uterine anomalies. Uterine anomalies are often a common cause of breech. There's just not a lot of room for them to turn. So a normal ultrasound, a normal anatomy scan, symmetric growth. So we're ruling out hydrocephalus. We're making sure that baby doesn't have an abnormality that would cause its head to be abnormally big compared to its rump and thighs together. Another criteria, we always say mom has to have the right stuff, right? Like she's not just doing this because she fears the C-section, but also because she believes that she can do this.
That's so good.
Yeah.
When you're attending birth, are you taking more breech birth or also twin birth? And is there a big difference there to you? Is there like an increase in risk in your eyes to attending a twin home birth compared to like a breech home birth?
Yeah, they're different in that I get more twins, honestly, a lot more twins. There's way more twins that are coming my direction.
Okay.
Because a lot of the breeches are found at the end of their pregnancy, that it's kind of a huge deal to kind of change directions right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the overwhelm of that prevents them from being able to find me. I'm such a rare provider if they want to do the home birth, right? And in the hospital environment, they really won't find someone to support breech. There's the occasional doctor here and there that will do it. But those doctors are also trying to say no from now on, because not that they don't feel like they can do it, but then the culture of the L&D ward is not competent in it. And thus there is microaggressions towards those physicians. I'll say that are preventing them from being supported in that, like,
That's
trying
so sad.
to find reasons to fire them or get them written up for something else, just to continue them. That stuff definitely happens in the hospital world against physicians. But twins are different. So twins, the first baby is basically like a singleton. Like I treat it pretty much the exact same, except I'm taking 2 heart tones at 1 and then 2. That's it. But once that first baby comes out, that second baby is really a mystery. And I think that's the thing that's uncomfortable for the physicians in the hospital, because you really don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah, that's always like the high risk moment, is like right after that first baby comes out, everyone panics and they're like rushing, at least in a hospital setting. I'm assuming you don't act this way, but they're trying to get that second baby out immediately as if it's going to crash like right then and there. Or I don't know, but
they don't know what would happen in that situation specifically. But even if they did know that the baby was going to just settle into its new space and find its new rhythm, they would still probably be stressed out, because you don't know which direction that baby's going to go once baby A is out. Sometimes the lowest part of baby B slips into place and right behind baby A, but sometimes baby B like nosedives into suburban, nosedive their head down, or sometimes their head down, and all of a sudden their head is in the front and their butt was above baby A, and then it falls in, and all of a sudden you have a breech baby. So all of that is absolutely fine to do with someone who knows how to do a breech extraction, because if there is a large decel, like that baby sat on its cord or got it wrapped around its arm and then got pulled tighter, and it's like in a situation where you do hear that the blood supply stopped to the baby, which is what you hear the decel. By the way, the decel is a protective mechanism for the baby. It's just like what happens when we go underwater, when we do a dive reflex, or when we put cold water on our face to get rid of
it's physiological.
Yeah, it's a protective mechanism. So it's not something we should say, oh, that's so bad, the baby is suffering. No, the baby is slowing itself down so it can last longer and have that decel. So if we hear that decel's persisting, though, we're going to be like, okay, eventually this kid needs a little bit more oxygen to these tissues. So let's just get this baby out, and we'll do a breech extraction, which means that I, or whoever's capable, will just put their hand up and help that baby through the pelvis by folding it into a tiny tube-like structure and pulling it through. It's really not that crazy. Like, it's not like a big wide open baby stretching and stuff. If the person has skill, they can bring the baby down slowly enough that it falls through like a cylinder.
That's fascinating to me. I love that is a skill that you have, because not many providers have this skill. And it sounds a little scary at first, but it's like, I would pick that, having someone put their hand up inside and fold that baby to help guide them out versus a cesarean where they're cutting you open. Like, I'd much rather have someone help guide that baby that knows what they're doing.
So, I mean, everyone that I've done it to says that, they say it's a sharp pain versus like the crampy pain of delivery. But it was so quick and so worth it that they didn't have to go through a surgical recovery if that was an option for them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So have you ever seen or attended a triplet home birth?
I've been invited to. Me and Stu were invited to do one last year, but we declined at this stage in my career just so we can, keep me going a while longer. Because there's definitely a lot of people out there that want to just tattle on anyone doing things outside the norm.
Yeah.
We definitely are currently within a boundary that we could defend if any hospital wanted to come at us. Because it's funny, it's never really the patients that care or want to press any suits against anyone in our practice. They're just grateful someone's doing it, even if there's like a shoulder dystocia, or it was their choice. But you have the consent forms and all those things. It's usually the transferring hospital that we bring them into that's freaking out, and it's one of their nurses or physicians that decides to sit down after their shift and tattle on somebody. But it never really works. I mean, if something terrible were to happen to somebody, I guess it could work. But we're very blessed in that our patients won't release their information because it's none of the state's information.
Yeah,
it was their decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a rare thing. I've had someone ask recently and I thought, oh, I know who to ask. I know it doesn't happen often, much at all, but I was curious.
Christine Lauria did one recently. Did you ever have her on, Christine Lauria, the midwife?
No.
Midwife? So she did a triplet birth last year that was very famous. And she's so funny because people were trying to say, are you licensed to do it? She's a global midwife. I mean, she literally has done more deliveries, breech and twin, than probably anyone on earth, honestly. Like, she should be the one certifying everybody. Or someone wanted to pull the "Are you licensed?" card, and she was just like, "Let them come at me. Let them it's fine."
Like, I wrote the book on this, you guys.
Exactly. So I mean, she did do one, and it was really awesome. And she did have a breech extraction, and they did film it. So if you go to Global Midwife, I believe it's her Instagram handle with Christine Lauria, she can see a breech extraction that she does. Some people, it was only on the third baby. So the first baby came out, I believe it was like head down naturally. The next baby was like a breech, came down head naturally. But then when they were monitoring for the third baby, there was a decel that persisted despite position changing. And so she said, okay, let's just be safe because no one knows why that decel is happening. Is it because the placenta is coming off early? Is it because the cord?
Yeah. Wow.
What is the reason? We just don't want the baby to have to deal with that longer than it needs to. It's not painful, like we talked about. It's physiologically preserving. But let's anticipate that the baby can recover from this dip in their oxygen for a minute or two, right? Like, they can handle that for sure, especially with fetal hemoglobin, which holds oxygen super strongly. And so she does a breech extraction. Some people really didn't like that she had to do that. And they said that that was very invasive and offensive, that she had to stick her hand in some of the, that the mother wanted that. That was something she discussed ahead of time and got permission to do if it was needed. If she hadn't had that permission, she would have let the mom just do what she needed to do and then deal with whatever outcome happened.
Wow, fascinating. We'll have to look up that video. What other ways do you do things differently managing breech and twins at home that makes it safe and more comfortable?
Well, the funniest thing is the system would tell you that everything I'm doing is making it less safe. But that's because I'm not working on a sick population, first of all. I'm not working on a population that's malnourished, or I'm working on an American population that can afford a home birth. Okay. So it unfortunately, like, that's just a different nourishment to deal with, less diabetes, less hypertension, less other issues. Sometimes those do come up and we do have to manage those more closely, especially in integrating more of a hospital-based MFM. If there's something unique, something that we can't handle, we have to know what our abilities are. But for the average client, say they come in who is a di twin pregnancy, so diamniotic, dichorionic, they usually get a growth scan once a month instead of weekly or every other week, which is what they would do in the normal system. Now, the normal system would say, well, you should do it every week, every other week, because there's a portion of the population that will have late onset or random onset fetal growth restriction. And when there is a growth restriction, you want to know why, and you want to basically deliver the mom earlier so that that baby could have more growth outside the mother.
Which is crazy to me.
Exactly.
Why would you think that delivering that small baby earlier is going to benefit the baby? The baby needs more time in the womb, not less.
Well, the funniest thing is, I think it's because I've thought about this too. Why do they teach this? And I think it's because they don't think that that mom has the ability to change something in her life that could benefit that baby. They just think that mom is going downhill, being neglectful of her own body, not able to stop whatever she's got going on. So we got to just protect the baby so that she can just live her life independently. But in our model, midwifery care model, we understand that the mom is very aware of what she can contribute to that baby's growth. So if we see a little bit of a growth lag, we'll do things instead of like transfer them out of care. We'll say things like, you need to eat more, you need to stay still more, you need to relax more. You just need to be in a state of growth, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that calm nervous systems grow. They're not, that's the healing section of our body. So we just do things like that. And most of the time, they literally just get better on their own. Wow. But like nobody ever would teach that, right? Like they're never going to like care enough about a client to be like, let me call her once a week and make sure that are you ordering out this week? Did you get your meal train going so that you are not cooking this week? Did you get babysitters for your other kids? Because you need 2 weeks off till we get to your next ultrasound. Like we're doing social stuff with these moms if we have to get them better, which is not within the medical model. And that's a midwifery model that I learned from midwives. And I'm so blessed to know those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, it's so refreshing to hear you talk about these things, because it's like you actually care about the whole person, the family, the whole, the heart and what she's dealing with and what could be contributing to, some of the things you're seeing downstream, but where did they start? It's not random. And I think that's sort of the approach a lot of obstetricians take with birth and pregnancy. It's like, oh, anything could happen at any moment. This random emergency could happen. Randomly, your baby stops growing. It's like, this birth isn't random. Like there's a reason. If you back up, we can usually pinpoint it. We might not always, but when we make those adjustments, like you're facilitating for your clients, it's incredible what can happen in the course of health and growth in a positive way. Have you ever faced a situation that tested your faith or intuition during a birth? And what did you learn from that?
Some of the biggest lessons that I've learned from home birth are about setting up expectation. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Some people really think that a home birth obstetrician or midwife is a doula. That's something that has to be corrected.
Definitely not.
Not, and that's all. Yeah, doulas are needed. And if somebody is behaving like a midwife is acting in the role of a doula, that's a gift. It's not necessarily because they need to, you know what I mean? It's not. And so if something is unliked in that environment, it shouldn't be necessarily taken as though you're not doing your job, because that's not their job, right? First of all. And things that have tested my faith, the variable decel story I was telling you about honestly, all of them have tested my faith in some way, but I always just have to say to myself, birth was created divinely, perfectly, especially given the circumstances that I've set up for this birth. I've made sure that this baby is term. I've made sure that this family and this baby are healthy. I've made sure that this baby is in the right position. I've had deliveries where like one baby comes out and the other baby doesn't come out for quite a while. And it's like,
how long have you waited? What's the longest?
I've waited 11 hours the most. I'm willing
between twin births.
Twin births, yeah.
Wow.
That's
unheard of in a hospital setting.
Yeah, it was. They didn't believe her when she registered the babies, because they were like, no, babies don't come out on 2 different days, 11 hours apart. That's just because in the hospital it's 1 and then 2 immediately, right?
Yeah.
And I get it. There's many, many more people that need to be delivered. Like, it's a business, it's a system, it's institutionalized. Like, to imagine you could be treated the way that you could be treated at home in a hospital, don't lie to yourself. It's not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
I want to cure there.
So tell me, but I need to know more. I have questions
Yeah.
about this birth. What contributed? Like, why was there such a lapse in time, and how were you feeling in those hours?
That was so fun. So that woman, she was remarkable. She didn't make a noise until she was complete. Like, I literally, she's like, I don't know if I'm in labor. She had her husband calling me. When I went in there, she still had her clothes on. She was like lateral lying and just holding her belly, breathing slowly. And then I was like, do I stay? Do I go? She's like, you check, I'm okay. Are you inviting me to examine your cervix? Yes, she's inviting me to. So I'm not enforcing it. Okay. I check her complete.
No.
Totally complete. I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a cinch. So then I call on the team and they all get there. This mom pushes probably from like 7 to 11. So a long pushing phase and upright. Finally got one baby delivered in a bathtub. And then transitioning means just like monitoring baby B until they start getting a normal heart rate pattern. That's easy for us to say, okay, this baby's fine. One thing that I know that other doctors don't know is that cervix is still soft, malleable, had been completely dilated, is easy to push open at this point because it's done its breakdown of its collagen already. So I'm not worried about checking her again, right? Like, I'm just like, okay, she's been dilated once. I'm assuming she will be dilated again. Okay. So we basically are like, okay, let's try and get this second baby down into the pelvis. We move her around, we get her walking, But then, like, at some point, you just know it's probably like 3 a.m. Everybody's tired. The team is tired. The mom is tired. She pushed a long time. She wants to breastfeed this first baby that came out. We finally cut the cord because she can't hang it off of her this entire time. And she's so tired that you can realize her body starts shutting down and it goes out of labor. Now, this isn't bad because baby B is still in there and doing well. There's still one cord hanging out because one baby came out, but all of us just naturally went to sleep. We all did. We all were exhausted.
Wow.
So we all went to sleep and we woke up at 7 a.m. It's in Huntington Beach. So we went, me and one of the doulas there, went and got coffee and donuts, and mom is still sleeping, barely contracting. Like, contractions have basically stopped. And we're like, okay, how are we gonna, I'm gonna say they stopped. Like, I honestly don't remember having a contraction when we woke up in the morning. We're like, what are we gonna do here? She can go in, they're gonna section her because it's a breech baby. So we're gonna offer her the alternative is a breech extraction. And she took it. So we did a breech extraction around 10 a.m, which was about 11 hours after the first delivery. And it was so controlled. I mean, of course, we prepped her like emotionally for it. And I'm sure she was scared, but she was definitely one of those women that just was like, I can do anything for a few seconds type of thing. So we did it. And she got distracted by the other midwives holding her other hands and like maybe singing to her. I feel like there was definitely some singing or something. And then me and actually I was with Lindsay Miles, and she was at the perineum with me, and we brought baby out, got baby onto mom. And interestingly enough, Lindsay has been around twin births with me and Stu for so long that she knows that it is the practitioner or the medical provider that also has the nervous system shifts, just like the mother. Like, so our adrenaline spikes up. So we shake as the mom, because like it's something like that. We're human, right?
Yeah.
So she put her hands on my lower back, started doing some craniosacral like grounding on me, and did some on the baby, and touched on the mom's thighs, and everybody is just being regrounded really quickly after the birth.
Wow.
Which is not going to happen in a hospital, right? So
no, they wouldn't even. They just take that baby right out of there.
On mom, one midwife, because I usually have one midwife per baby, rubbing that baby's little like face, like just softly, giving it to mommy to kiss and stimulate, because we know that stimulating the trigeminal nerve of the face makes the baby move its face like this, take bigger breaths, because everything's reflexive at that point in their system. And these are also things they don't teach OBs. It's just things that I've learned from midwives, that you kiss babies on their cheeks and you let them get a little uncomfortable, and they just do things that open themselves up And so this baby opened itself up. I'm getting grounded. Mom's grounded, baby's grounded. And all of us just look at each other and go, that was the most beautiful and peaceful breech extraction ever. And by the way, it was 11 hours after the Ashi. And that mom had barely any bleeding postpartum. It was like, I will just say that
I love that.
uteruses do their thing in many different situations. Uteruses just clamp down. They do. They do. Like,
especially in a low stress environment when you have lots of oxytocin, which the doctors don't understand either.
It's different than a pitocin, right? Yeah. It's just different than the hanging one because it's like the entire system believes something when it's natural, when it's like it all works together. It's not just like pushing one thing and not the rest. And like this.
Yeah.
I don't even you can tell I see things more than I say things. So for me, I'm very visual.
Yeah.
So that, it was a beautiful experience. And that I had to call the Orange County Vital Records and be like, I was there. I have video. It's real. Those are they both came out of her at 11 hours apart. Some midwife, I think Lindsay said she had one that was 24 to 25 hours apart. She'd done one ago. I heard Nathan Riley saying that there was a 4-hour apart one he did in a hospital in San Diego, but mostly they are back to back, just a minutes apart because of the breech extraction. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's so cool to hear stories like this of ways that can happen differently, because until we know, it's like, well, I don't know, I've never experienced that. But then when you hear about it, it's like, oh, okay, that can happen and it can be healthy and peaceful and beautiful. And why does it always have to be an emergency? Maybe there's a reason that baby needed more time that we just don't know. What would you say to a mother who has a breech or twins and is considering home birth? What are maybe like 2 or 3 things she needs to know going into this, or what should she be looking for as she is kind of maybe facing this big decision? Or even vaginal birth, not everyone has the option to do home birth. Like, you're kind of a unicorn in this area, but maybe is she going to go try to find a provider at a hospital even to do vaginal for baby?
Yeah, I mean, I could say the standard, like if you see the red flags, then don't choose that provider. But the truth is, in this era, you don't get to choose who's going to be there at your delivery. Like, it's going to be a surprise every time. But what I would say is, in whatever birth setting you choose to go into, you remember that you are the mother, despite threats, despite whatever they want to, throw at you. But also in that power and in that wisdom, you have to also learn to negotiate with your provider. So maybe asking for something if you give them something, because what they want is for you to do the standard, go through care the way I want you to. And if you show any resistance, it really throws them, because that's how they're processing every birth, so that it's easy for them to think about it. They know next steps on every single person. And if you throw something, then they're going to be thinking about it. It's just energetically off-putting. And so what you could do is, some people want to say, oh, I don't want Hep B at delivery, or I don't want finger sticks during my labor. I'm only GDM A1, which is control the diet and exercise, right? And if you throw everything out at them at once and they're just like, well, we don't recommend this, and we'll be like, okay, well, how about I make a concession and I will do the finger sticks, but I really don't want to do that. And they will take it. You just have to learn how to hold power from them and give it strategically. And always question everything. And I would check it even with your doula, if you are lucky enough to have a doula, to see if what they're saying is true. For example, getting an epidural and you still feel pain, or it started to wear off. Is it because there's not enough medicine in your bag being dripped into your epidural? Did it get displaced? Because I've seen people come out and say, oh, they just told me I'm allergic to epidurals and they don't work on me. And that's just not true. That's not true. That doesn't happen. It just means it's not in place, or the medicine isn't more strong, or they did the wrong medicine. There is an explanation.
But it's always the mom's fault. Somehow. I misplaced your epidural, but at the end of the day, it's still your fault.
Exactly. But it's just too much to stop and redo everything. But if you really want that epidural, then you ask for an anesthesia consult with the anesthesiologist. And if there isn't one available, you wait for one to be available, whatever. But you get that consult from the expert that's there and you ask them the questions you want. Don't just take the first answer that you get in the line of power between you and what you want.
Yeah. So own your power as mother.
Yeah.
Ask lots of questions. Keep asking questions and negotiate with what's really important to you. Really great advice. Victoria, thank you so much for sharing today. I loved every minute, especially the stories. They are just so mind-blowing. And just the expertise you bring to this field. You're such a gift to women. I wish I could just copy and paste you all over the country so that everyone could experience, the benefits of breech and twin home birth that should be available to everyone. Unfortunately, it's not, but you're doing such a beautiful, profound work. And thank you for taking the time to share with us today on the podcast.
Yeah, and there's more stories on my Instagram, and there always will be when I find time between everything to put more. So if you want some interesting stuff, go ahead and look there.
Yeah, please I always ask, and I forgot this time, but please tell us, where can women find you if they want to connect with you and learn more?
The IG handle is at Victoria_MD_birthing. And then emails to our clinical staff is hello@Victoria_MD_birthing.com. And even if you reach out to Stu Fishbein at birthinginstincts.com, we do co-consults and can help you decide if you're out of state, if you want to move into state during your birthing potential time, and work with you together. Me and Stu still do a lot of things together if you need that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah. And so ladies, if you're in the Southern California area and have a need for home birth with an obstetrician, please look her up. And I just refer a lot of people who have really unique situations. If your obstetrician or doctor is telling you one thing and you're like, I don't know if this is the rule of law. I need to know, I need to talk to someone who knows their stuff. Reach out to Dr. Victoria and Dr. Stu and get an expert second opinion. I definitely recommend that for those cases where it's that's above my pay grade as a doula, but I know who to send you to. And it's great to have another name and face to send people to. So make sure you connect with Dr. Victoria and try to stump her, you guys. I'm sure you probably can't, but
you probably could. I'm sure. I don't want you to try, but no. But when it comes to home birth, I have the most experience in the practicing field for twins and breech at this moment. I wish it wasn't that case, and I'm always trying to share the knowledge on how to do it. The only thing is that the numbers are not high enough to actually have a student, because that's you maybe get one every other month, that's in that unique vein, or you know what I mean? It's not easy. Maybe one day I'll open a breech center or birth center. If anyone has a nonprofit org out there and they're willing to open that center, let's do it. Get a hold of me. I want to help in bigger ways. It's just I'm not trained to think and do those bigger things. So I need people to help me get to that.
Oh my gosh. Well, baby, let's put the call out. Let's make that happen. There are people out there I know who are skilled in that way. And let's just make this connection happen. That'd be fantastic. But thank you so much. And ladies, we'll see you again next week.